Hello, Bethany.
Hello, Mark.
Bethany, I do not have your IMDb with me because I would need a dictionary to hold all of your credits or a phone book. There are so many. Bethany has logged hundreds of hours of directing and producing episodic shows. And may I say that go back to St. Elmo's Fire.
Not hardly.
No. You have mentored filmmakers, and you've also written a book called Directors Tell the Story with one of your friends who's also a noted filmmaker, Mary Lou, is it Belly?
Belli.
Belli, Mary Lou Belli, thank you. I'm terrible pronouncing names. And speaking of books, we are actually going to give away 2 books tonight. They are signed by Bethany personally and have arrived here via FedEx. One book is going to go out to our Zoom audience, and one book is going to be given away to our live audience based on a couple of trivia questions that I have for later in the program. What I'd like to do is speak about a historical evening that occurred rather recently while you were directing one of the Dick Wolf shows. On an evening a couple of weeks ago, Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, and Chicago PD aired. And the amazing part of that is they were all directed by women directors. Can you speak to this event, the relevance of it, and perhaps how you got involved with the Dick Wolf family?
Well, my association with the Dick Wolf family is relatively new. Honestly, I only started working for them this past February. They are doing an amazing job of bringing in women directors and people of color directors. I don't know how they changed their game, but it's a wonderful thing. And it was just a coincidence, really, that they aired on the same night. But it was a wonderful coincidence, and I'm really happy to hear it or see it, because most of the time when in my career, the percentage of our dramas directed by women in television was under 10%. And for people of color, it was even less than that. And I'm pretty sure that the statistic today is that women direct 34% of television, of narrative drama hours. While that's not 50-50, it's such a huge step from where we've been. So that night when all the Wolf shows aired and they were all directed by women seemed like a bellwether of things to come.
Well, congratulations for being part of that. And I guess one of the old saying is there are no coincidences, right?
Yeah.
So how do you feel the industry is looking over the next few years in terms of giving women and people of diversity opportunities to work in episodic television?
I think the industry as a whole really has an emphasis on it right now, and have had for about the last 5 years. In fact, in 2014, the Directors Guild got put into our contract with the producers that every studio and network would create a diversity program to educate up and coming directors and welcome them into the world of directing episodic television. So every studio, every network has that program. I am affiliated with the Warner Brothers program. Well, we use my book as the textbook, and a lot of the programs do use the book. But the idea is when someone somewhat older, like myself, and other people like me, begin to slow down, we need people to fill the pipeline. We need newer, younger, fresher, and thereby less experienced directors. However, how do you get experience? You get the job and you do it and you learn. So that is coming along really nicely in the last 5 years, I would say. There's so much pressure on companies to get their statistics up that they really are giving people a lot of of opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
Wonderful. It's amazing to hear, and uh, may I express some gratitude for the fact that you have clearly paved the way for so many people to
Thanks.
enter. Pardon me.
I said, oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. But it's true. I mean, when you, how did you get your start in episodic television? And what was the room like? You know what I mean? What did it look like for you as a female director surrounded in an industry that, as you said, was less than 10% women?
I'll tell you the quick version of how I got started. I started right out of college as a secretary, a production secretary, a secretary to the executive producers of a show. And I was with them for 3.5 years. I mean, the show went 3.5 years. And then when those producers named Bruce Paltrow and Mark Tinker made their next show, it was called St. Elsewhere. And at that point, they promoted me from their secretary to associate producer, which at that time, at that place, associate producer meant I supervised all of post-production. So there'd be a final rough cut, and I took it all the way through post, all by myself, because there was no department. It was a lot smaller, more efficient arena back then. Anyway, I supervised the sound editing, the scoring session, the ADR, the dub, the coloring, and sent it off to the network. And in the process, learned how to tell a story visually, because I saw every episode, I don't know, 100 times. So in the 4th season of St. Elsewhere, after bugging my boss, Bruce Paltrow, and Paltrow, yes, that's Gwyneth's father, I bugged him, and I took an acting class for 5 years during that time while I was an associate producer, because the primary job of a director is to elicit performance, the fullest, most real, most authentic performance there can be. And I had to know how to communicate with actors. So took an acting class, did my associate producing. In the 4th season, Bruce gave me my first shot to direct an episode of St. Elsewhere. And then I stayed that year and the next year, and then left the show to become a freelance director. And that was 1987. And here I am, 238 episodes later.
Amazing. It's amazing. You know, I just had the conversation with some of the students. We were sitting at a round table last day of class yesterday, and we talked about how people start, and how you can get that toe in the water, so to speak, but that doesn't necessarily mean you stay there. It's a vehicle to the next opportunity, to the next opportunity. So it's so nice to hear that you started basically in post-production, and then somebody was kind enough and smart enough to recognize your abilities and your talent. And I love the fact that you also took an acting class, because I promote learning how to communicate with actors better with the young directors here on campus.
They have a method and a language and a way of being all their own. And I find that directors who don't understand actors and where actors come from emotionally, and what their process is, they spend a lot of time over talking everything, and it's not necessary. You know, if you know their language, you can communicate pretty easily.
And get the results you're looking for as a director.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one hopes so.
One hopes so. Speaking of being a director, the role of an episodic director is much different than that of a feature film director, a documentary director, or a commercial director. How would you define the role of an episodic director?
I think I'm paraphrasing someone when I say it's my job to make the best episode of their show that I can. By that, I mean, it's already up and running. There are elements already in place. There is a style established. There is a tone established. It's not my job to be an auteur in episodic television. It's my job to elevate the episode that I direct to become its best self. It means I have to adapt with every show that I go to, in terms of what their style is, what they like, what they don't like, who the actors are, how they like to be worked with, who the showrunner is, you know, how things run on that show. I have to adapt. I come onto a show and I have 7 days of prep. I'm probably just got the script the night before, if I'm lucky. 7 days of prep, and then I begin shooting. It could be 8 or 9, sometimes 10 days now with COVID protocols. And at that point, I become the boss on set. I become the director, and I have to have breathed in everything about that show that I possibly can and do my best. It's still going to be of me because I'm the one making the decisions, but I'm making those decisions with the knowledge of what that show expects.
So when I first met you, which was I remember our first phone call, and I remember the first time meeting you at 6 in the morning in Conyers, Georgia, and then taking a van ride with you. But at that point, you were the producer director, or the producing director, of a show which was a prequel to the Vampire Diaries called The Originals. And one of the things I do discuss with the directing classes here is on an episodic show, you have a position or a title of somebody who is a producing director that also happens to be able to direct a portion of the season shows. But I'm sure that I cannot explain it as elegantly as you can. So can you tell the audience what is a producing director in episodic television?
Well, so often these days, as was the case with The Originals, the writers are in Los Angeles and the production is somewhere else. So there needs to be a person there who is the creative interpreter for the showrunner, for the writer of the episode, even for the studio and network. There is a line producer there and there's a production manager, but their jobs are seen to be more boots on the ground, kind of let's get this thing done. Whereas the producing director is the creative voice. And as I said, the interpreter for messages coming out of LA, that this is what they're looking for. This is what they're happy with. This is not what they're happy with. And it's the producer director's job to communicate that to the director that they are assisting. It's my job to help every incoming director to the best of my ability to do their best job in making the show. And certainly in terms of maintaining the tone of the show and the style of the show. So primarily my work with those directors happens in prep because that's where all the decisions get made. The guest casting, the locations, the production design for that episode, it all happens in prep. And also that director is expected to block and shot list the script in prep so that if I asked for it, I could see a shot list of every scene and how that director intends to shoot it. Some producing directors do ask for that. I tend not to unless I have a concern. So as that director begins to shoot, the next director shows up and we start the prep process all over again. So that's the primary thing. I do get to direct a number of episodes per season. When I'm a producing director, after The Originals, I did 2 seasons on a CBS show called Bull. But I missed directing terribly because that's where my heart is. So.
Well, thank you. That's a much better answer than I provide in class, I can assure you. I'm going to lift some of your dialogue. I'll borrow from it. When you work with directors on a show, what are some of the virtues or the qualities that you look for when bringing them into the environment of an episodic show?
So why do I hire some directors and not hire others?
Basically, yes. I was trying to be a little flowery with the question, but yes. You hire directors. What makes you hire one director over another?
It has to do with fit. Fit is a word I use all the time, meaning, does this person fit with this show? Does the show fit with this person? Do I, as a freelancer, do I fit with a show or not? And I've really learned that if it's not a fit for me, if it's not a story area that I believe in, or something that I can be enthusiastic about, something that I feel my skills will be useful in, I should not take that job. And they should not hire me, because uh, we all have experience. We all have things we're good at and things we're not so good at. And so I'm looking to hire directors who fit the material, who have a sensibility for the material. And also I'm looking for directors that I think will fit with the personalities involved, primarily the actors. In other words, I'm looking for directors who can communicate with actors and respect actors, and help them, support them, love them. Um, I'm looking for people with a strong work ethic who I know will block and shot list and prepare, and they won't try to wing it on the day, because there's nothing I despise more in a director. And it's based on the kind of material that it is too. Um, if it's a Western, if it's a young adult piece, if it's a violent piece, if it's a family piece, there's whatever genre you want to name, you either fit with it or you don't, or you can adapt to it or you can't. So that's part of the job for me.
Specifically, thank you, by the way. That was a great answer. Specifically speaking to younger, less experienced directors, what would you suggest they work on or work towards in order to get to a point where somebody like yourself could hire them for a show?
Okay, I have two things to say on that. The first one is, if you say you are a director, direct. Get all the experience you can. And if that means, shooting shorts on the weekends for years, do that. If that means shooting news footage at the local station, do that. In order to direct, it's a craft that has to be practiced. The 10,000 hours thing, from Outlier is real. And the more experience you have, the better you will be at it, undoubtedly. I mean, that's just factual. The second thing is, we talk about in the DGA, the Directors Guild, all the time, is to know who you are as a director. And therefore, we say, what is your brand? And it goes back to what I was just saying about, where do you fit? So what kind of material do you care about? What kind of material do you want to make? What kind of material are you good at making because you've done it already? So it means to work on your brand and be able to present yourself to a potential hirer as your kind of director, whatever that means. If you're interested in character pieces, working with actors, and you respond to fish out of water stories or growing up stories, you should say that, and you should have material to back it up, so that I, or anybody else who's wants to hire you, understands that yes, you may be a great fit for the show that I'm hiring for.
So when you hire a young director, sort of one of the go-tos might be the IMDb page and their credentials. But there are young directors who actually don't have, extensive IMDb credentials, but they have a portfolio of work on a website or on Vimeo or whatever platform they're using. If and when you are given an opportunity to look towards a young director for a project, would you go to their portfolio page and look at their work? And if so, again, what are you looking for? Are you looking for framing? Are you looking for lighting? Are you looking for story? Are you looking for performance, or all the above?
First, I want to say, in the things that I do, I can only hire directors who are members of the DGA, the Directors Guild of America. I can't hire non-union directors. So there's that. Young directors have to put themselves in a position to be able to get into the union. But if that's happening, and a director has been submitted to me that doesn't have a strong IMDb page, Yeah, for sure. I have to look at their material, whether it's from Vimeo or whether it's a website or whatever it may be. What am I looking for? Well, the short answer is good storytelling. The short answer is, was that script fully realized? Was it realized first in performance and secondly in the visuals, in how they told the story? And how do I know that? If I'm touched emotionally, if I laugh, or if I cry. In other words, did that story impact me? And that's a pretty simple, basic answer, but the absolute best indication of whether it was well done or not.
A lot of our, well, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. Story, being touched emotionally, touching your heart, feeling something is absolutely critical to the craft of being a director.
I'm glad I can support your teaching point of view.
Well, well, of course we are, absolutely. I mean, so some of the majority, if not all of our students are going to be out into the world. If not, some will be in the world in another year or so. And they're going to have entry-level positions. They don't know this yet. They think they're going to walk on set and be a director, but you and I both know that they're probably going to end up being PAs and PAs and PAs. So, so when, the question consistently arises, every opportunity somebody can ask me, which is, how do I get my start in the industry? What do I do? Where do I go? And I'm wondering if you can provide any insight into that, that answer.
Well, I'm sure you say the same things that I do, which is, um, it's all about who you know, and it's all about pursuing those personal connections. In my case, it was someone that I had met at college who was 3 years ahead of me. She had gotten a job, not through a personal connection. She had written an amazing fan letter to Mary Tyler Moore, and through that, she'd gotten a job at MTM. Highly unusual. Most of the time, it's who you know. So this person who was 3 years ahead of me, went out to California and I said, "Can I call you?" And she made one call, and I had an interview, and somebody quit, and I got the job. Okay. In the back of my book, there's I think 36 stories from various directors in Hollywood who say how they got their start. Almost always, in fact, I think 100% of the time, it's they're doing one thing that allows them to meet somebody. Either that person is helpful or they have a friend who's helpful. It's the same thing in life that it is in the entertainment business. Very seldom do you get a job by cold calling or sending in your reel or whatever you think you could do. It's, if it's your dentist's niece that has some kind of position, then you better get to know your dentist's niece. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, you keep working at whatever job you have to the best of your ability, because sometimes what happens is you're working as a PA and you're disappointed in life and you're glum and grim and you don't get noticed. But you're working as a PA and you smile every day and you give your best and you do more than you're expected to do and you are helpful and happy, and that gets noticed, and then somebody recommends you for a job. So it's all up to you how you live your life and how you get noticed and how that leads to your first really significant job.
It's amazing. The advice I offer students as well as my own daughters is smile. Nobody wants to hang around somebody who's grumpy.
That's so true. And I'll tell you, that just brought up a memory for me. My boss, Bruce Paltrow, I was his secretary. And a couple years into it, as he's crossing my desk coming in the morning, he sort of mumbled, "You'll never know how much that smile means to me." And look what he did for me.
Isn't that nice? That's
Isn't
amazing.
that sweet?
Amazing. Well, I'm sorry. I have to just say, look how much you give to others. I have seen you on set, and I just want to tell the audience that I have never seen a crew respond so quickly, so attentively, and so considerately to any other filmmaker on the planet. And I've been on quite a few sets with quite a few interesting people. And I think that your kindness and your demeanor and your compassion for others and love for what you do is the energy that you project out. And it was truly amazing to watch you walk on set while I was standing up on a balcony looking down. And I just want to add that the way we met actually was through Bonnie, the producer of the originals. And the way I met Bonnie was actually meeting her brother in Northbrook, Illinois at the mailbox, collecting my mail and having a little chat. And he said, you know, my sister's a really big producer. You should meet her. And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I ran home and looked up Bonnie Weiss and I went, oh my goodness, I got to meet her. And that's brought us to this moment today.
Yes, look where we are. Who would have thunk it, huh?
Who would have thunk I'd be sitting, I remember sitting in a Panera Bread with you going over a production book and saying, who would have thought I'm with such an important director in Panera Bread in the middle of Georgia?
Yeah, so true. And here we are, you're in Florida and I'm in LA and we're still loving what we do, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love being able to give something back to these students and then take a little time once in a while to do something for myself. It's a really nice lifestyle.
Good for you.
So, thank you very much. I have so many more questions. I want to be considerate of time. I do want to jump to the book, actually. Now, I have a feeling that if I could predict the future at some point, I would imagine that content making and episodic television teaching is going to be integrated in curriculums everywhere. And above all of that, you wrote this amazing book, Directors Tell the Story. Can you tell us about why you wrote this book and how people are using this book? Because I think it's really valuable for students today.
Again, I, as a freelance director, experienced so many times walking onto set and someone on the crew or someone on the cast saying to me, you wouldn't believe how horrible the last director was. They didn't do this or they did that. And I began to resent it because I was in that barrel with them. I was a TV director. And if they were bad, then people might expect me to be bad. So I thought, I can complain about it, I can get mad about it, or I can do something about it. And what I could do, having done it for so many years and directed so many things, I felt like I really understood the craft well, and I could write that stuff down. Because film school doesn't always teach exactly how we do it in the real world. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And if somebody didn't go to film school, how would they get any training at all except by experience? But they needed to know how we do it in TV land. Then I met Mary Lou Belli. She was shadowing me. That's how we met, because she came from the comedy world. But she had written a couple of textbooks already that were primarily aimed at actors. So she knew what textbooks required, what the elements were. And she was very energetic and willing to, attack this with me. So we wrote it. And the first edition came out in 2011 and the second edition came out in 2016. And we're working on the third edition because things continue to evolve and change. And we want to help people stay informed about that stuff as well. So it's used in all of the studio and network diversity programs that we talked about before. It's used on a lot of university campuses. I don't know, Amazon keeps going through it. I go on occasionally and go, oh, they only have 2 left, and then they restock. I don't know. It has a good word of mouth, and I'm very proud of it.
Thank you. As you should be. This is a substantial piece of work, and it's amazing that with all of the shows you direct and produce and direct, that you even make time to give back like that. And speaking to, can you just briefly give us a big picture overview of the Warner Brothers program that you train young filmmakers, young directors in, and maybe what the Guild is doing if you wish to go there?
The Warner Brothers program is special because if you are accepted into the program, it's only with the understanding that the material that you've already shot and submitted has been seen by showrunners at Warner Brothers. And only when a showrunner commits to giving you a job, a directing slot in the season ahead, do you get accepted into the class.
Wow.
So when you leave the class, you have a commitment, you have a job. Mary Lou and I teach it, and generally it's about 12 people in the class. There's some actors from Warner Brothers shows, but also indie directors, commercial directors, feature directors, all kinds. The portal is generally open for submissions from mid-January to mid-February. We did it by Zoom last year and did it very effectively. I thought we found a way. It's kind of hard to teach directing not in person, but we found a way. And we'll see what happens this season. It may or may not happen this season because, again, we're still in COVID land. And truthfully, those people that were in the class last year were promised a job, but nobody was hiring newer directors in the time of COVID because of the protocols and because of the pressure. So Warner Brothers still owes those people a job. So we'll see what happens.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that, taking on the challenge during a pandemic to train up-and-coming talent. That's amazing. So everybody in Zoom land out there, please send in your questions because we're leaving plenty of time for Q&A. And more importantly, right now, I'm going to give away one of these books to our audience here at Stage C at Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota. But in order to win a book, I have a trivia question. I do. I do. I have some really good trivia questions. I have hard trivia questions and not hard trivia questions, okay? But this one is, I tried to make sure that my number one trivia question really evolved around a amazing woman in television. And in the 60s, she was probably considered the most powerful woman in television in Hollywood. Her production company launched shows. I'm sure you don't remember these shows, but maybe you studied them. The Andy Griffith Show, the Dick Van Dyke Show, and more importantly, her production company and her decision-making skills greenlit a show called Star Trek. Who is this person? You want a hint? Okay. I love Lucy. Yes. Yes. And what was her name, Amanda Miller?
Lucy Bell.
What?
Lucy Bell.
Close. Lucille Ball.
Lucille Ball.
Yes, Lucille Ball was a very well-known comedic actor, but behind all of that comedy, she was an incredible business person who really had insight into television and had the ability to find shows that were remarkably successful. So Amanda Miller is one of our audience members. She said Lucy first. And well, you'll have to share. Who, well, you could share the book. Pass it around, you know, recycle books. Let somebody else borrow it and read it. This is signed by Bethany. Amanda is also not only a really amazing student here at Ringling, but Amanda's also an actor in a TV show that's shot locally here in Sarasota. What's that? And, oh yes, an aspiring director who just shot her junior project, and I've had the pleasure of having Amanda a student for 2 semesters now, and I am absolutely positive that she will one day be at the other end of a Zoom call that I'm interviewing her on, God willing. Okay, to the studio, not the studio audience, the Zoom audience. Zoom audience, I have a trivia question, okay? Who is Jon Snow's father from the show Game of Thrones? Don't Google it. Don't Google it. Take your hands off the keyboard. Yeah, I know. Like you're going to listen to me.
What do you want them to do? Put it in the chat or what?
They're gonna put it in the chat, I suppose.
Somebody in the audience?
Oh, we've got to tally this up. Jon Snow's father is. Who's that?
So one of our students, her first name was Sally. I can't tell her last name. I got it right.
Selly?
Yes.
How do you spell that?
Celi.
Selly, congratulations. You won an autographed copy of Directors Tell the Story. I will be on campus tomorrow. Please find me, mshimmy at c.ringling.edu, and we'll meet up late in the afternoon, and I will give you your autographed copy. Thank you. You got it right, Selly. At this point, from Selly to everyone, thank you. I'm so excited to read it. Yeah, go Selly. You know, what I'd like to do is open this up to the students. They're really the reason why I'm here, and you know why we're all here is to teach them. And I'd like to open it up for Q&A. We have a microphone behind me, and I've also invited the members of the audience here to step up and use the microphone. So why don't we start with one of you guys? Maffer, please, when you ask a question, please introduce yourself, say hello, take your mask off so that we can hear you. I'm going to step aside.
Hello. Bethany, my name is Maffer Como. I'm a current sophomore student in the Brand Entertainment program, and I took Mark's directing class this semester. Before coming here, I read a couple of your blog entries in your website, and there is a quote that stuck out to me, which said, focus on what you have to give and not on what you have to get, and what you want to get, or what you have to get. And I really wanted for you to elaborate on that because I thought it was very interesting and it was very consistent throughout the blog entries.
It's a good question. Thank you. That originated because it was a method for me of combating nervousness and fear going on to a new show, and how would I do, and would they like me or not, and all the things that I can't control. And what did I want to get when I was in that fear? I wanted to get approval. I wanted to get asked back. I wanted to be liked. I wanted people to like the film that I shot. But I have no control over any of that. But if I focused on what it was I had to give, then I felt infinitely better. What did I have to give? I had my vision for the show. I had the homework that I had done. I had the joy and creativity and connection with the show and with the people who made it. I had my ability to listen and to collaborate. I had a desire to do everything I could do to make that episode the best it could be. And so when I focused on that, rather than where the fear came from, I was able to do my job without nervousness. And then found that that was kind of a key to so much in life. Focus on what it is you have to give, not what it is you want to get. And I thank you for asking that question because it's a hugely important thing to me.
We have a couple of questions. Do you have a question that you would like to choose, or shall I choose from the 4 questions that are on this fancy iPad?
You choose.
Okay. What has it been like producing and directing during the pandemic?
Interesting. What happened, as you may have read about this, there was a negotiation between the unions who all came together and the producers, and they came up with a plan called the Way Forward. It was quite a long document, and it was the research for it came from leading epidemiologists, and the leadership for it came from Paris Barclay, who used to be the president of the DGA and is one of the main negotiators, and from director Steven Soderbergh, who had directed a movie called Contagion. And from that movie, he had these contacts with epidemiologists and an understanding of how pandemics work. So they made this agreement of how we could proceed and keep people safe. And it had to do with all the things we've subsequently heard about, that is social distancing and wearing masks and, um, continuing to sanitize our hands um, and testing. I have been tested 5 days a week since September. Thankfully, I remain healthy. And so does everybody else who works on a show. So the primary concern was the actors because they could not wear masks when they were working together. The other thing that we also had was contact tracing. So I would generally wear a thing, it looked like a little medallion around my neck that had some kind of ability to tell where I was at any time and who I was with, so that if I got sick, they could contact trace people I had been around. The other thing, the thing that I really hated but was necessary for the longest time was, in addition to masks, we directors and people on set had to wear face shields. And the reason that was really problematic was people couldn't hear me very well, not just me, any director, with this, not only a mask, but then a shield around. I couldn't hear other people very well. And it cut down on our ability to communicate, which was so difficult. And my realization about that really came from my first day of shooting on Chicago PD, when one of the regular actors in the first scene of the day called out rather plaintively across the set, "Bethany, could I see your face?" And I was so touched by that. And I was across the room, so I took off my shield and I took down my mask, and he just nodded and smiled and said, "Thank you." And I really became aware that I could see the actors' faces because they couldn't wear masks, but they couldn't see me. And so much of our job, everything about our job, is communicating how we're feeling. And if, they can only see that, it makes it so much more difficult. Since then, every actor that I've met, at least for a short amount of time, took the mask down so they could see who I really am. So we continue to do all that. I mean, even though I just finished last week on a job, and here we are in May, we all still wear masks. We all still wear face shields. We all continue to get tested. And the catering part of the business was impacted tremendously. Everything is boxed and, taken care of. We all did what we had to do and we made it work. And you get to see TV shows because we're making them. And that's the good news.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that answer. My friends who work with you on some of the Chicago shows talked about the contact tracers and how if anybody on the show does test positive, that I guess it's a 12-minute time duration, that if they're near somebody longer than 12 minutes, that person has to leave the set as well. And I said, well, that's really terrible. And he said, no, it's really not. They go home and they get paid for staying at home for a couple weeks.
So true. I have to say, I was really fortunate. I directed 7 episodes between September and now, and never experienced a shutdown. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
Never. I mean, every show had a shutdown or two along the way. I didn't personally experience it at all.
Oh, it's wonderful. What were those shows?
I directed 2 episodes of Station 19 with my friend Paris Barclay, and that was right back at the beginning. I mentioned Paris before. He was one of the negotiators on that Way Forward, which is how we all started. And it was really nice. He was in one of the first shows to get going, and he really wanted to embark on it with people he felt he could trust, and also to assuage the fears of people who were starting. So he directed episodes 1 and 3, and I directed episodes 2 and 4. He was the dad, I was the mom. We were able to make people feel like, hey, we can do this. So I did that, and then I did Bull, and I did All Rise, and I did the three that I mentioned: Chicago PD, Chicago Med, and organized crime. I hope that added up to 7. I think it did.
Wow, amazing, absolutely amazing. So speaking to the episodic directors that you have gotten to know over the years, one question is, how much collaboration is there between yourself and the director in prep or the director who's doing pickups or inserts or stunts? What goes on between the directors who are basically in the offices at the production?
A lot of meetings. But of course, now those meetings are all on Zoom, which means you spend a lot of time on Zoom. But if you're let's say you're having a meeting about props, and the guest director thinks that the character should drive a bright yellow Pontiac something, car from the 60s. And that is really not how I was seeing that character. That's an indication of we ought to have a chat about that. And how does that director see that character, and why would they pick that kind of car or that kind of house or the particular gun that the character carries? You also get indications of what a director is like with other things they ask for, like things about the script that concerns them or changes they might ask for. Or we have lots of conversations about what is this show, why is this show what it is, and how do we shoot this show? What is the form of the show? What is the style of the show? Do we do a lot of handheld? Do we do a lot of studio work? Is it all in movement, or is it all shots that don't move? So that by the end of the 7 days of that director's prep, I have been able to suss them out. They've been able to suss me out. We've been able to work together so that they can approach the episode feeling confident that they will direct it well. And then I move on to the next one.
So in short, there's a lot of collaboration. You work together with other creative people to ensure that you all have an opportunity to do the best work, to direct the best episode.
Well, that was a better answer there, Mark. Thank you.
Well, I just took your words and your thoughts and just kind of condensed it. It was all your ideas.
I was trying to give specific examples, but your condensed version was more clear.
Well, thank you very much. Question, and I think we have time for one more question, of course. And then I'd like to ask if anybody from the audience would like to ask a final question. But are there any particular episodes that you've directed that you're most proud of?
I know this will sound silly, but actually the one that I just did, which was Law and Order, Organized Crime. We could put up the poster of that because we have it.
Yes, do we have a still?
There it is. That's Christopher Maloney coming back to work on this show. I had total freedom to direct it however I wanted to do it. There was a producer director there. He made the style of the show very clear, but they welcomed creativity, and that was a joy. And the second thing that was a joy for me was connecting with Chris and with the other actors and really working on stuff to make it the best it could be. By stuff, I mean performances coming off the script. And it was really ambitious, the third thing. We had a 9-day shoot and 6.5 days were on location. And this is during COVID time. This is in New York. This is big budget stuff. And, oh, thanks. There you go. That's very nice. That was taken at the backyard of the mansion of the bad guy, who I will just throw out a figure that will be amazing to you. It was to me. To spend a day there shooting on the eastern edge of Long Island, the location fee was $50,000 a day.
Oh my God.
Not even talking prep and wrap. I'm just talking shooting days. And of course, there were prep days and wrap days. So big show, big ambitions, Shakespearean kind of drama, which allowed for not big performances, but deep performances. So I'm most proud of that right now. But you know what? I say that about every show that I do. People ask, what's my favorite thing that I've done? It's always where I just am or have been, because I have to commit to a show. Even if I go into it thinking it's not so great, I have to commit to it 1,000% in order to do a good job. So I come out of it saying, I really loved doing this show that everybody thinks is kind of stupid, but that's okay. I'm going to love it anyway.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you for providing some insight to the location in Long Island. New York is New York.
Yeah. And New York is harder in COVID
Yeah.
because just for permits and parking and moving and catering and all that stuff, it's just harder.
There is, from what I remember, there is no parking, but
You know what happens? That's true. It just gets strung out even longer and farther than it used to be.
well, what I remember most about New York was that when I was filming there, and we would upset somebody somewhere in New York, which is so easy to do. They never called the police. They called the fire department. Then 4 trucks would show up and ask what's going on, and we would say, well, we're shooting a commercial. Nothing's going on. Well, somebody called the fire department.
Really?
It's crazy.
That sounds like that interrupted shooting big time.
Oh my goodness, yes it was. Do we have a question from anybody in the audience? Blake, would you like to come up?
I'm Blake Drevis. I'm a student of Mark Schimmel's brand entertainment class. And so I had a question asking about what you were talking earlier with Mark was that, to be on a set, to work with other filmmakers, you have to be pleasant. You have to smile. You have to just be, no one wants to work with a Debbie Downer of some sort or someone who has a big ego. And so my question is, what about, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, from what I've seen from like other filmmakers, like some of them have big egos and some of them are a lot meaner than other people nowadays. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, how would you deal with that, or like what is your experience dealing with, I guess, less than pleasant people in film?
The truth of the matter is we are locked up together essentially. And if you're a freelance director, you're locked up for the 3.5 weeks that it takes to do one episode. But if you're on staff there, let's say you work as a set dresser or a camera operator or whatever you may end up doing, you're locked up with those people for 8 or 9 months. And we want that to be a happy family. We want that to be, can't we all just get along? So anybody who doesn't fit that mold and who doesn't try to be helpful and happy may not last very long there, because it just drags everybody else down. And it's really important, hugely important, to be collaborative and to not say a bad word about anybody, and don't be gossiping, and to volunteer to do stuff, to be helpful. That's the way to make your career keep going. And I think it's a good way to live your life if you possibly can. If you can't be that kind of person, then I don't think it's the right arena for you, because it's really crucial.
Even here at Ringling, the students essentially start in a class, and that they're intact, almost in a pod together, and they grow together as filmmakers. They find their voice as filmmakers and artists together, and by the time they've gone through the program, which is 4 years for the undergraduate, they've matured as filmmakers, but also have developed sort of a sense of family. And we want all of the family members to behave well. Do you feel, I sort of know the answer to this, but I'm asking it more for the audience benefit. There are people in the industry who have been known to be difficult. And I guess my question is, do you find that difficult people, how long do they last in the industry?
Well, the tolerance for that continues to go down. We all want to, especially when we're in a bubble like we are with COVID, we all want it to be a happy family. But the other side of that is, how talented is that difficult person? If their talent outweighs their being difficult, sometimes we suffer through with them because it's worth it, because they help make the product good. But I'm particularly talking about actors and sometimes directors. But even then, I mean, I think most people realize that it doesn't serve themselves and it doesn't serve the production to be difficult. I mean, I think the only people that are people that sort of struggle with their creativity and their ego, for that matter. Like I said, the tolerance for that, it continues to go down. It might have been, tolerated early in the history of filmmaking, but not anymore.
Excellent. We're going to put this to a close. And as we do, I wanted to extend all of my gratitude to you for your time and your patience and your knowledge and sharing a piece of yourself with the students here at Ringling. Thank you, Bethany.
My pleasure.
Really. And I couldn't wait when there was an opportunity to recommend somebody to speak to students. You were absolutely the first person that came to my mind.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope it's been helpful, and I wish everybody the absolute best going forward. It's a hard thing to get into and a hard thing to keep doing, but if you love it and you have to do it, I wish you the absolute best.
Well, thanks everybody on the Zoom. Thank you for attending here in the studio. And everybody be safe, stay healthy, and have an absolutely wonderful summer. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What an amazing evening. Thank you, Bethany, for being with us tonight, and to Mark for moderating so well. We hope that you all enjoyed this virtual Inside the Industry Studio Labs event. And I thank you again for being here, for your continued friendship with the college, and especially for supporting our students. We hope to see you at future events, hopefully in person. Meanwhile, have a great evening, and thank you again for being present tonight.